Okay, enough games. Let's get to the body.
If people could only be a part of our mic checks, though, I think at some point we should start putting our, mic checks.
What? Yeah, that's what they want to...
Take, cuts, and we'll just make a whole podcast.
A blooper reel?
Yeah, a blooper reel of our mic checks.
I think you'd be sadly disappointed with how those would actually be perceived.
Yeah, they would just bring me joy and me alone.
This can be a mic check, but we're starting the podcast.
We've started. Mm-hmm. And what are we going to be talking about today?
I was thinking for a special page.
What did I tell you about thinking?
For special page 8.
Page 8.
Page 7 was our guts.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that we've covered a lot of different types, a lot of different genres that involve like the human body or mind. Obviously, we just did the gut, which was, digestion and the intestines and the...
Taking ownership of your gut health.
Yeah, and we did some of the words that came out of our human body. I think page 2.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, yeah, page 3, I think, was the words we speak.
That's been woven into most of the pages so far, though, I would say.
And then, like, our minds and our thoughts and our behaviors and, like, our emotions. And it's time that we start to chip away at the actual physical body, skeleton, musculoskeletal, joints, ligaments,
your musculoskeletal
bones.
System.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the system.
Yeah. And I sort of took the reins a little bit on gut health last time because that's my area of interest. But this is your jam. This is what you do. Life coaching aside, and you talked a little bit about this earlier on, but what you even got you into life coaching is starting as a personal trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And still the bulk of your business is personal training. So this is what you do day in and day out. And I think you definitely have a lot to offer in this area. You've certainly offered me a lot in this area over the years, and things that I've learned about you or learned from you rather, and things that I have changed in how I exercise and treat my own body physically when we talk about like working out and alignment and stretching and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it's time. The time has come to talk about the body. Yeah.
And we have a few ideas and concepts that we're definitely going to talk about and introduce, and then kind of whatever comes from that, just going with the flow a little bit for this. But there's so many just individual things we could focus on.
Of course.
But we might focus on a few of those right now, but there's so many in future, recordings and episodes and pages to come, for sure.
Well, and I think much like gut health too, I mean, when you talk about working out or the physical body or ways to move your body, I mean, this is just a way to introduce you to some of these concepts, and we are not the experts in all of these concepts by any means. Definitely you more so than myself.
And some of them were experts.
Yeah, that's true.
And
one in particular that we're going to talk about today, I would say you are one of the most expert people that I know when it comes to alignment and eliminating, like, strategies for eliminating chronic pain.
Yeah, to be able to see things like that and to be able to want to look at the body holistically and to help introduce people to the idea that bodies, meat vehicles, meat popsicles.
I mean, we could probably not call it that, though. A vessel. I mean, and we've talked about that, sort of used that analogy of your body is like a vessel.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very apt way to describe it. It is your vessel through getting through this life, it carries you day in and day out. It takes you from point A to point B. I mean, your brain is in there. We're going to get a little bit away from the mindfulness stuff today, but yeah, it is your vessel. Like what you touch, all your senses, your sensory information, how you perceive stuff is literally dictates how you interact with the world. And then physically in all ways, I was going to say physically if you were able-bodied in the sense of that you have 2 legs that work and 2 arms that work, and like you have limbs that are free to move you, it carries you around this world. But honestly, even if you don't, even if you have an amputation or you are in a wheelchair or a motorized chair or something like that, like it's still your vessel that carries you around the world day to day.
Yeah, whatever the best you can make that. What's the best vessel that you can maintain or make to whatever you were born with? If you were born fully functional, it's like, well, great. How long can you maintain that full functionality, and can you also improve it where you're able to do things past when science has said you can, you know?
Well, not even science. I mean, how many...
Society.
I'm sure you've heard this many times, more so than myself, but this is something I certainly hear at work, both from patients and honestly even like colleagues and coworkers on a regular basis. But it's just like, oh man, I'm really getting old. Like my back is really sore today. Don't get old, kids. Like this is what happens when you age. And so to that, I would ask you legitimately, like, is that what happens when you age? Yes. Like, does aging mean you have to be in pain and you have to have restricted mobility and you have to be able to do less than you once did? I mean, to some capacity, yes, like there is logical, real science that says, like muscle mass will decrease at certain points as you age, or bone
density, muscle mass,
yeah. So some of that, yes, to an extent.
You can rage into the dying of the light. Like that's what you're trying to do with some of those things. But what we were talking about, like let's circle back to that very soon, and we'll ask each other that question of, what do you want out of your body? Yeah.
Well, we can just ask it now, probably. Like, what do you want out of your body?
The ability to, or I guess, to maintain the ability to go and do what I want to do without having to take my body into consideration of its like limitations,
And what do you want to do?
If I was like, I want to climb Everest, like obviously you have to take into consideration your body and stuff, right? But it's like, well, okay, I can't go on a plane because my body has broken down, or I can't go swimming because my shoulder is messed up. Kind of like at the drop of a hat, can your body do almost anything that you ask of it without being in chronic pain or risk of frequent, like acute pain?
Risk of injury.
Yeah, risk of like acute injury and stuff. And I would want my body to feel good, to allow me to do what I want to do, and to also for me to feel good in it. So a part of that would be looking good as well. I want it to run how it's supposed to, and how long can I get this thing to run as it's supposed to?
Right.
And can it look good too?
And I'm happy that you bring up the second point, because honestly, I don't think there is anything vain in saying that.
In having bicep veins?
No, but I mean, if we're not all genetically built to have like a bodybuilder's physique, and quite honestly that's not the aesthetic that I personally am looking for in my life.
And as a male,
or in my partner for that matter. With that being said, not that I've ever gotten into bodybuilding, but I very much do respect the discipline that it requires to do that sport, if you want to call it sport or activity.
It's everything.
It's all consuming, and it's so time consuming, and
and you have to be smart about it too.
There's so much education and science that actually goes into it. So while that's not my immediate goal, I actually very much respect
that's
people
why
that do
it's
it.
what are you looking for out of your body, right? And that will change,
of course. I think what I'm looking for in my body is similar to you in that I want to be able to do and maintain the activities that I enjoy. So, for example, I am obviously an avid yogi. It's a huge part of my life, both for like physical reasons and mental reasons. And if I broke my leg and was unable to practice like power yoga classes on a regular basis, I would become a bit of a nut job for a while, right? So for me, being able to practice, to be able to push my body to do tough physical things isn't just a physical thing for me, but also it's really good for my mental wellness, and like it's a stress release. So all those things go hand in hand for me. So I need to be able to do the physical stuff also just for mental health reasons.
You use yoga as like a vehicle itself for self-improvement. Right?
100%.
Of your body and your mind.
Yeah,
so
100%.
So then to be able to maintain a level of balance and strength and pliability where you can do yoga.
Yep. So for actual physical sport and activities, whether that is yoga, whether that is rock climbing, whether that is, some like wild hikes and like long walks and things that we've done, I always feel very grateful we usually talk about this, I find particularly when we travel and go on vacation, is I'm always extremely grateful that I do have limbs. First of all, I was born able-bodied. I was born with legs that have the ability to walk, and most of the time walk pretty well. Most of the time. Add in a bit of liquor, and sometimes they get a little bit wobbly, but most of the time. So I always feel grateful that they're able to work, and they're able to work in a way that's pain-free, just to carry me to different places of the planet that I want to see, and to do things when I'm in those places. Like, I think we talked about it in a previous episode, but like climbing Baru when we were in Panama, like that was huge for me. Like maintaining the vessel to be able to physically carry me to places that I want to go is like hugely important and motivational for me.
And what if, absolutely, because those can limit you from even finding out if you like doing those things. It's like, I can't even do this because my body won't let me. So I don't even know if I like yoga, because when I first did it, I was already in pain and I bailed. Or I can't go rock climbing because I have tennis elbow, or I can't play tennis because I have climber's elbow.
Can't golf because I got golfer's elbow.
And to also, I think to add on with like you and like what you're looking for, like to have a body where you can actually try out so many different things to find out what you like, and then when you find out what you like, to be able to keep doing those things.
It's particularly important to me. I would say this is strong for you, or this is true for you and also for most people, but as a female, as a biological female, I also find a lot of empowerment in feeling strong, both in my workplace. It allows me to feel more confident going into certain types of calls with certain types of interesting characters, knowing that
your paramedic job?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Knowing that I feel like, I'm not a trained martial artist or anything like that. I'd be like, hi-ya! But like, no, all joking aside, having a sense of like physical strength makes me feel more confident to do my job. And honestly, even just as a woman like walking around Toronto, or just a woman in general, like I find a sense of security knowing that I have some strength and like can lift heavy shit.
Yeah.
And, you know,
in your job, like just the fact that you're like lifting, you know, at the very least awkward positions upstairs, downstairs, and then you factor that into the person can be overweight, obese, so then you have that.
Never mind the equipment you're carrying them on, which can sometimes be
or
like
and in a stressful situation. It's always good to lift heavy things in the most
you're not breathing.
In the most stressed out time imaginable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, a business is failing, deadlift time. Let's hit your max deadlift.
No wonder our WSIB rates are off the roof.
Yeah. So being able to actually do the job, and then to be able to do the job when perhaps there's a aura of perhaps uncertainty from the patient that you're working with, of like they might be mentally unstable, or they are mentally unstable, and I'm in the back alone with them here. And,
that's happened many times.
And then outside of the job, the tiger walks around the jungle very chill, because it's not really worried if it can hold its own. It's like, it knows it's strong and it's going to be able to handle shit. So it can enjoy, it's not looking over its back for a zebra that's going to bite its neck. You know, so like, to make yourself strong and capable is a huge part of what you're looking to do.
Yeah.
And what about appearance? Are you looking to look good at all?
I mean, that is never I wouldn't say that's ever the main reason. Like, that's definitely not the driving force for any of my physical activities. I don't think so. Like, it wouldn't be number one. But it's always a nice byproduct if I feel confident in how I look, or I'm like, ooh, look at my hamstring today, or like, oh, there's a little bicep. Like, those are nice things to look at after the fact and be like, okay, well, physically I feel strong, mentally I feel good, and now physically I feel confident because I feel like I look good as well. Like, there's no denying that that's a nice byproduct. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong or vain in like acknowledging that part of physical fitness.
You'd just be lying to yourself and everybody. It's like, oh, really? You don't want to look good to reproduce? Cool. I guess you're the only species on the planet that doesn't think like that.
Right. Now that it should.
It doesn't have to be the driving factor.
It shouldn't.
And it shouldn't be the driving factor.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're male from ages 19 to 20. Not like, but it's, you can, you know, work out if it's the driving factor or not, but it is going to be a factor for sure. And it should be somewhat of a factor. Like, I want to also feel good with how I look. You know, that's a real thing, your confidence. And I also want to look how I feel, if I feel healthy. And because society kind of has built-in things of like, what's a healthy person? What does a healthy person look like these days, you know? And to be sexually attractive to your partner, or to get a partner.
Sure.
Those are all like things to not just bury away and pretend that you're above them, and also, if it is your driving factor, then perhaps it's time to build that portfolio a bit. It's like, let's not have all this stock in this, because what happens if and when somebody gets pregnant and they don't have control over their body and how they look, and it's not the deciding factor in how I look anymore. You still would want to work out to feel good and to feel strong and to be helping your mental health and stuff, right? Like,
right. Well, I would argue that if it is your driving factor, which then, if we're relating it back to human needs, perhaps relates to like significance, it's hard to keep up. Like, it's hard to have that as your driving factor and also keep it up for life, right? Because as you age, you know, you could be a man in your 50s, 60s, 70s taking testosterone replacement, or again, like women doing like hormone therapy replacement after menopause and you know, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But at some point as you age, like things get saggier, muscles get weaker, things atrophy, you get shorter. Like that's just science, right? So I think if the aesthetic is your driving factor, it's going to be a lot harder to both maintain that as your motivation and achieve that as you age. Whereas if your driving factor is, I'd like to be able to travel for as long as possible, I'd like to be able to walk pain-free and without assistive devices for as long as possible, I'd like to be able to do activities that I enjoy, whether that's yoga, rock climbing, surfing, soccer, like whatever your sport or your activity of choices that brings you joy. Those, I think, are things are motivating long term, that are going to keep you like sticking it to those goals long term.
Yes. Yep. And like you were saying earlier, okay, so figure out your portfolio of why you're doing things and what you want to get out of it, and then you can also break that into those 6 human needs a little bit. It's like, okay, so turns out you're probably chasing just significance then by having to look a certain way or be more attractive than somebody or better in your mind than somebody. And significance, that you never get to a full tank of significance, and it's never really fulfilling by itself. Because especially as you're aging, you're gonna run on the treadmill as fast as you can to stay in the exact same spot. That's what happens when you age. You have to keep running as fast as you possibly can and the hopes of staying in the same spot.
Yeah.
And so obviously eventually you're going to lose that race. So that significance conveyor belt, you don't want to only be stuck on that one. But to realize why you do things is good.
Yeah.
To start,
to know
right?
why you do anything is good, I think.
So we both kind of included to have a body that is unencumbered. Is that
I don't know if that's a word, but I know what you're trying to say. A body that allows you to do the things that you want to do uninhibited.
Yeah.
And also pain-free.
Yeah. And to even try out things that you don't know if you like or not.
Right.
Because that's how you figure it out.
Right. So on the topic of pain-free, why don't we dive into that a little bit? Because this is something, I mean, you deal with professionally on a literally daily basis, I would say. You have clients that come to you with goals. A
lot of those goals are getting rid of certain types of physical pain.
Right. So maybe why don't you, or tell me how you got into being interested and learned how to help chronic pain.
From myself was a big factor of it.
Yeah. In what sense?
Well, just like a quick recap, that I've been doing in-home personal training for 12 years or so now. Before that, I went to Humber College for Fitness and Health Promotion, which is basically a 2-year program of teaching you how to be a personal trainer. Anatomy, physiology, the behavioral side of it, the economic side of it, the starting your own business, the testing for athletes, the skin fold, like body comp tests, the exercise phys of what's happening, building muscle, all having to do
running group fitness class,
having to do every single group fitness class. Yeah, so like literally one of our classes was like every couple weeks. It's like, okay, this is spinning week, this is yoga week, this is step class week.
Oh, I would have loved to see you in step class week.
Everybody.
And grapevine.
So you would have to do it all together, and then you would also have to teach it.
Right.
And as like a 19 and 20-year-old male teaching a step class, is as you would imagine, like
you didn't thrive.
I'm looking for like the nearest hole and crawling in it, and maybe luckily I could die in it.
Right.
So having to be exposed to all those things, and I went into that schooling just because I didn't really have any desire to go to business administration in Windsor or something. Mm-hmm. It's like I wasn't really like shooting up the charts for like a business degree, or like not really knowing anything about.
You started there, right? You did like a semester.
I did at Niagara. I did some fitness and health, and then I transferred to Humber.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I was accepted to Windsor.
Oh, I see.
But again, it's like try to take any acceptance in business admin or whatever the hell. Like, because everyone's going to university. So I was like, no, don't want to do that. So it's like, well, I've been working out and being active and playing sports like forever.
Played high level hockey your whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been working out since I was doing push-ups as a little kid and stuff.
And now we make our nephews do it now.
Yeah. So that's how I kind of got into it, and then started doing in-home personal training pretty much like right out of school, because I knew I didn't want to go to a gym and just do like the whole walking up to clients and being like, so
how many sessions can I put you down?
Yeah, all the stuff that comes with being a Good Life employee or like a big box gym employee, of like, it's kind of it's a system, and it's targeted towards like numbers game, and there's incentives. Yeah, of course.
Salesy.
So I was like, well, what if I just worked for a company that did that for me, and I got clients and I would go to them, I'd go to their house, I'd go to their condo, I'd work one-on-one, I'd work with husbands and wives, and then through years and years of that, of like, okay, this doesn't really matter that I went to college for it, I'm gonna have to figure this shit out like all over again. And I had a good starting position with knowledge and to get some of the kinks out, but to really like self-teach injuries and behavior and exercise progressions and regressions and what's really going on in the body, and like, okay, so she's in pain, and like just all these things showing up over and over and over again for years, and then obviously you would hopefully learn some things. And a lot of my learning has been tailored to this person is in pain. Mm-hmm. This particular spot on their body when they do this is equaling pain here. Mm-hmm. And so I would kind of become a pain firefighter. Paramedics and firefighters obviously go hand in hand. So like, if you can think of, okay, I'm getting clients and they have goals. Some could be weddings, some could be weight loss, some could be want to look better, some could be want to get rid of pain. But pain's always going to be coming up, and throughout workouts, throughout weeks, throughout months, and that can be like debilitating. So,
well, I've obviously heard you talk about this over the years, and I'll relate it to like my own just personal journey of working out. But if you do want to get like super fit for that wedding, and you want to have that booty that pops in that wedding dress, right? And so say like a really good exercise to help you with that specific goal would be lunges. Like if you can't lunge properly, because anytime you have your knee that goes slightly above or forward of your toes, you get crippling pain in not only your knee but your low back, and then you can't even do it with body weight, let alone weight. Mm-hmm. How are you going to achieve that aesthetic goal if you don't target the pain-free goal first?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because that would be happening, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I know the great exercise for this. Like, oh, I can't do it.
Right. So I think what I'm kind of hearing and what I know about you, and again, what I can relate to my own journey, is like, you see this exercise, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, this would be a great exercise. They taught me how to teach lunges at Humber. I can do this. And then you go to teach a real person who's not another 20-year-old in your health and fitness class, who also like takes care of themselves and knows what you're talking about. Yeah. And it's like, well, shit, what's the workaround on this one? Like,
Uh-huh.
how do I even get to the point of
Yeah.
starting this exercise when they don't even have the mobility, flexibility, or they're not pain free enough to do
or
it.
technique or body awareness. So yeah, like literally working with general population in their house and trying to reach a goal, getting through pain barriers, that's a pretty good education for everybody. And I'll do that for like a dozen years, and then you can see why it's kind of evolved into like the mental side and the behavioral side.
Sure.
And yeah, so it's like I'd recommend it to anybody. But maybe we can give you some quick express train type of
course.
information and where to look and how point your flashlight to those areas that would help you like here and now. And so that's kind of like in a nutshell where I'm at right now, and
Yeah.
in another nutshell how we look at pain. That's important to start too. Like, what is pain? Is it French bread?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to sort of segue into that before we got into the tips and tricks. But I think we should start by saying that pain does have benefits, right? Pain is protective. Sorry, pain exists for a reason. We have pain receptors in our body for a reason. It's natural. Much like for anyone who's listening, if you listen to the GI health or the gut health episode, I sort of talked about my own like journey in figuring out how to get my gut issues at bay, and part of that was I had this like intense abdominal pain and swelling and pain. Pain is a way that your body communicates with you. Your body can't yell out using words like, hey, stupid, quit doing that, right? So pain is just a way that your body communicates with you, and it can be protective. So, I mean, very simple example, but if you reach your hand out and you touch, the hot part of a stove, you're immediately going to pull it away. And actually the interesting thing is, without getting too nerdy on like all the science and neuro stuff, but you actually start to pull your hand away from pain in that exact situation before you sense the pain itself. You actually you don't physically feel pain until it's already away, because your body's so smart that your sensory receptors and your neurons fire faster than the pain you can actually sense in your body. All that's to say is that it exists for a reason. It's to protect you from things that are harmful.
Oh.
Firefighters coming. It's to protect you from things that can be harmful to you, whether that is heat, whether that's from something like some sort of noxious stimuli that you shouldn't be around, right?
Yeah.
So similar to when your body is having, I think, not that this is my specialty, but when you're having chronic pain, like, so say you use that, like if we use that lunge analogy, if you are lunging forward and you feel pain and crackling when your knee goes forward of your toes, it's like, hey, something isn't right here. Like you're not warmed up enough. You don't have the flexibility. You don't have the range of motion. Maybe something is, you don't have the strength. Maybe there's actually a physical injury, like a tear or of some sort, right? But it's like, hey, there's something not right here. You should, like, ding, 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 like, hello, be aware of this before you move forward and actually cause more injury to yourself.
So does that mean just never do that exercise then, because it causes pain?
I mean, for some people, maybe, but for most people, no. Like, and I say for some people, maybe, because if you are, if you've had major, like, kneecap reconstruction surgery or, maybe there are some circumstances, but I would say largely no. It's just something you have to be aware of and work on, because pain can also be good. Like, if you're doing a really hard workout and you feel sort of that working pain during the workout, like your muscles are burning, the fatigue, that's good. That means you're going to get stronger. So it's also learning how to, like, listen to your body and read different types of pain and what it feels like. And some pain you can work through, and some is just like, no, that's an alarm, you should stop.
If yes, I think the goal is not just to be, like, pain free, right? Because if you do hard things, if you are working out and your muscles are burning, if you go for a massage and they're getting in deep, it's like there can be very great, productive, beneficial things that come of certain types of pain. Then there's some types of pain that the little light's starting to flick on the switchboard of like, oh, I see what's going on here. This is popping up. This pain's telling me something different. This pain's telling me that my knee's hurting when I go downstairs. When I go upstairs, it's okay. What's that telling me? Can I start to like educate myself where I can learn what it's telling me? Because there's going to be acute things that happen in your life where you sprain your ankle because some dog like ran across and like your dog jumped after it and you fell off the curb and there was an ice patch. There's going to be acute like act of God moments that happen. And then there's also going to be what seems like acute moments, but really it was just a buildup of chronic stuff where your ankles have been weak and your bones and joints have been misaligned for years.
Right.
And you took a step off of a small curb and you broke your ankle, or you sprained your ankle, and it's like, well, there's nothing I could have done. It's like, well, actually, it was a chronic injury.
If we learned like the acute injury that you're feeling right now is the sprained ankle, but if you're paying attention to the chronic instability and pain that led you to there, could it have perhaps been predicted and or prevented? Can
you roll your ankle and your foot hurts for a few minutes versus can you roll your ankle the exact same way and it's sprained for the summer or something like that?
Right.
So you're the pilot flying in the cockpit and all these lights are popping up and your job is to decipher what's happening and what do I do about it. You know, there's things that you might not be able to do about. It's like, well, someone just puked in, you know, E17 and the stewardess and flight attendants gonna have to clean up. There's nothing you can do about it.
Poor bastard.
But then there's other buttons where it's like, okay, there are things that this is telling me that I can do for my body, and you don't have to. Pain is not relative to age. It's not like that nice, clean graph.
55, so you must have
it's
back
like
pain.
When, you know, X and Y, all my math knowledge is gone. So, but I think the X-axis is the vertical one, and the Y-axis is the horizontal one.
We'll fact check that.
And it's like, okay, so as time goes by, does pain always increase? And a lot of people think that that's the case, but that is not true, because I've worked with a 16-year-old with low back pain. I've worked with an 84-year-old who's just fine and dandy.
Yeah. Which is pretty amazing.
I've worked with, like literally every for kids, it's not too much under like 14 or 15 years of age. But up to 85, that's pretty good, right? So I've seen people who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s where their bodies are breaking down and they're in pain and they're using that excuse of like getting older sucks. And then I've also seen people in their 60s and 70s and 80s and they're just ticking along. Things are running fine, running smooth.
Which I find so encouraging. I mean, I can't remember if you've mentioned this in a previous page or not, but a good chunk of your current clients are actually more elderly, like are in that 60s, 70s, 80s population. And I just think that's so badass. Like, not that I've ever met any of these people personally, but just, you know, I think there's something so amazing and encouraging about a 70-year-old being like, yeah, you know what? I think I am going to hire a personal trainer. And, you know, they're not coming to be like, teach me how to deadlift or like, you know, not to say that they couldn't.
I'll tell them what they're going to learn.
Yeah, not to say that they couldn't, but just this acknowledgement in older age of like, you know what, I want to be able to get off the ground if I fall down.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to wait 4 hours on the floor with our current ambulance system for someone to come pick me up. I want to be able to pick up my grandkids pain-free. I want to be able to have my knees not creak and crack when I'm walking up the stairs. I want to be able to just walk up the stairs, or I want to not use assistive devices for as long as possible. Like when we were talking, when you posed the question at the start of this episode of like, what do you want? That's what I want for aging, is just like functional strength and mobility for as long as possible. And so to see you have clients that not only want that but are doing it and are doing the work, like I think it's incredible.
Yes, and that work is best done yesterday. You get the sense of urgency when you're in pain and when you get older, that the best way to age gracefully and healthily is by never stopping it. So don't just be like, I'm gonna start, I'm gonna stop. It's like just keep going day after day. Again, think of another car analogy of like, I'll get the full tune up at 300,000 kilometers. It's like, you didn't get to 300,000 kilometers, okay?
Crapped out at 150.
And even if you do, you're gonna bring it to the body shop and the mechanic's gonna be like, I don't know what you want me to do with this, but everything needs to be replaced, and it's too late because you've rusted as well.
You're rusty.
You got
Johnny. You're rusty.
You're rusty. So just a little quick like poke for you all. Like start yesterday. But it doesn't have to be the pain over time or whatever scale of like, it's going to go up. You're going to have bouts of things 100%. And then just go back to that pilot cockpit analogy of like, great, let's see if I can work through this problem with air control here. And I don't have to jump out with a parachute. I don't have to only just think of, my first step is surgery. I have pain. I've tried everything. What have you done? Well, I went to see a couple doctors.
And like anything, much like we talked about in the GI episode, like there has never been a better time to
learn about it.
Right? Between the amount of free information, workout videos on YouTube, experts you can consult on free Instagram pages, people that have dedicated their entire lives that create free content on podcasts.
On Instagram. So much stuff.
You can depend, like whatever your ailment is, there's probably someone out there that's done their whole PhD thesis on it and can give you like free advice. Right?
There's thousands of accounts. Instagram is as far as like fitness and health knowledge.
It's top notch.
Yes, 100%. There's probably 1,000 people that have accounts where the video starts with like the title of the pain, and then they kind of are like saying, do these 4 exercises, and you could just gather a few of those and try them all out. Every person might not be the right answer for you. Every exercise might not be the one, but there's so much information that you can just take most of it and throw it against the wall, and a lot of it's going to stick and work for you, and so much of it is dedicated to fixing back pain, tennis elbow, climber's elbow, golfer's elbow, patellar tendonitis, Achilles tendonitis, all the itises.
Well, I would say probably the hardest place for people to start, and I mean, I feel like if I didn't have you as a partner who I lived with, who's taught me so much, I'm fairly well versed. Like not that I ever worked as one, but I did my personal training certification back in the day. I've worked in gyms.
You worked at physio clinics, right?
I've worked at physio clinics. I have a background in kinesiology, right? So I have some of my own background, but barring all of that, say you had, or someone had none of these sort of like formal education endeavors that we collectively had, never mind individually. I think the hardest part for people is starting with, like, they feel like they have to start with a diagnosis, and then how do I start, like, where do I, when there's so much information, it's almost overwhelming sometimes to be like, where do I start? So do you have any maybe recommendations on if somebody's like, I have low back pain, I don't have a formal diagnosis, I don't know if it's a sprain, a strain, a disc issue, like, how do we even start this process?
I think a good starting point is educating yourself on how things even work and break down, right?
Okay. Elaborate a bit more
so bones don't move by themselves, right? Would you concur?
I concur. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, they can grow by themselves, but your body is just a system of levers and pulleys, and your body is designed to do all the movements that you could possibly think of. You know, most bodies are exactly, you know, designed the same. There's some double joints going on, and, you know,
there's congenital abnormalities.
Things, yeah, of course, things like that. But the body is not designed to be in pain and to not be able to do regular tasks of what it asks, you know. You should be able to sit and stand on one foot, walk this many miles, balance, lift your shoulders over your head, like, you know, get down on the floor, get up from the floor.
Movements.
And bones aren't moving like by themselves. I think a lot of like the chronic or acute injuries are when your body's getting out of alignment. Your joints and your bones are getting out of alignment, and your knee starts to externally rotate or internally rotate, and you start walking differently, you start shifting your balance,
compensating
on the other side, and then the ankles not aligned with the knee and the hip and the shoulder anymore, and you just start basically like driving the car with like the parking boot on, and it's starting to rip shit up, right? And a good example of this is bunions. You know, bunions are obviously very sexy to talk about, and but a lot of people will say like it's genetic. My parents had them, and
there may be some truth to that.
There's truth in all these things, but it can also be true of, well, your mom and your dad actually walked that way and held themselves that way and had similar personalities, and it's showing up in your body as well. Of, well, actually you are walking without moving your arms a lot, or you are walking with tight abs, and that's causing your hip to go more into like rotation, and then from that torque of the rotation, your big toe is, every step you take, it's constantly twisting to the outside, and then a bunion starts to form, and like just the getting to the point where you're open to the idea that the body is keeping score of everything, and it's showing up. The pain are things showing up of how you hold your body and how you move your body, how you carry yourself day to day, your breathing, your diaphragm, your jaw tightening up, you're holding onto a glute. Like, I'll tell you from myself, like the easiest thing to say is like relax your stomach,
all of them.
Relax your stomach and let your shoulders drop, and let your butt relax, and keep your stomach relaxed,
and then go back and keep it relaxed again.
And continue to keep breathing, and to like shut off certain muscles, your glute, both glutes, the shoulder, jaw, your abs. Like, there's certain things of how we all hold ourselves and how we interact with life and stress, where that starts to pull on our bodies and it starts to show up in pain in certain ways.
Right.
You know? And that can just be like, well, you know, I sit a lot for work, and of course, like, my hands are in this pronated position so much, and I'm getting carpal tunnel. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, it's like that's your workplace showing up. It's like, well, what if you also, anytime you get into a stressful situation, you're tightening your abs and you're clenching your jaw and you're doing shallow breathing, and then that kind of just starts to trickle into everyday life, where you're always holding your stomach in.
Right.
You're always worried about having a double chin or a little pouch hanging over, so you always hold it in. Your muscles are working so hard to compensate, and then that throws you out of alignment. Throws your bones and joints out of alignment.
Your joints.
Yeah, your joints. You're not buoyant enough.
So to go back to the original question, I guess the best place to start is to just learn how, like, maybe what, like, if your low back is sore, for example, you can learn a little bit about the musculature and the proper alignment of the things that play into your low back. And then from there, yes, you could consider your lifestyle, your workplace. Are you chronically sitting? Are you constantly crunched forward on your home? At home, like over a computer or an iPad or your iPhone or whatever the situation is, your technology? Are you always sleeping on one side?
Right.
And then it's a combination of learning a little bit about some baseline anatomy, and then also considering just how you carry yourself day to day.
Yeah.
And then maybe putting those things together, and that would be a place to start your search.
Yeah, because I think everybody on planet Earth can look around and see, okay, over the last 10 to 15 years, people's postures are being affected by certain technology and certain technological devices, right? I think we'd all agree on that. So that's our external world starting to shape and change our bodies, right? So that happens all the time, even before, like, technology. So to realize, oh, this is real, this is what I do all day, is literally contorting my body and shaping it in certain ways, and pain is going to come from that because you're out of alignment. And there's a raised shoulder, there's a forward shoulder, there's a weak deltoid muscle. Like, learning, like, okay, it comes from alignment.
And if I may say, another good place to maybe start, and I only bring this up because this was really, I would say, sort of a turning point of when I saw you start to educate yourself more on this and implement it more, and just when you would talk to me, like, day to day about things you would do with clients or things that you were doing for professional development and learning, is you had purchased a book called Chronic Pain.
Pain-free.
Pain-free.
The exact opposite.
Pain-free by Pete Egoscue.
Yeah.
And it literally is sitting...
Egoscue, I don't know the exact pronunciation, but Egoscue. Yeah.
It's sitting on, it's a coffee table book of ours. It sits on our coffee table every day, and you have bought it for clients as Christmas gifts. You've recommended to friends.
Yeah.
And I would say this is what started it. It's almost like your Bible of eliminating chronic pain.
Yeah, it's called Pain Free, and it's probably been the book that I've bought more than anything. I don't think I've ever bought a book like more than once or twice, but this book I've literally probably bought and given it away 6 to 7 times, 7-8 times. And I came upon it because I was in pain myself in my hip. And from being a goalie and then being a beer league goalie, which means
a whole different kind of goalie.
Which means you're probably not taking the time to warm up properly or stretch, and you're dealing with the games at 11 o'clock at night. and then you're gonna go get a submarine sandwich after the game, and then go home and go to sleep. And it's just like if you watch hockey and you watch these goalies play like 4 overtime periods, and then
for this week.
It just happened. Carolina played their other goalie the next game. Florida was like, no, this guy's, we're going to just throw the kitchen sink at recovery and we're going to put him in again. And he's just like on a roll. Bobrovsky for Florida. But yeah, being a goalie takes a huge toll on your hips. You have to be like constantly like realigning, stretching, strengthening, massage, TENS machines, like the crazy shit that they must be doing for professional goalies.
But so you got this book because you were in chronic pain from being a goalie.
Yep, and I found it because it was one of Tony Robbins' like 5 recommended books. Literally, like 5. His list of like something like 5 books of that he absolutely recommends, and he's actually on like the cover as like a forward. He might do a forward, or he might do like just a quote on the page. But this book is all about that cockpit analogy of learning, what is pain? Is it doing anything for us? And another way of looking at it of like, no, we're designed to do this. We don't have to be in pain because we're aging. It's like because things are breaking down, we're getting out of alignment due to muscles being weak or tight, or one muscle being too strong or too loose, and like just kind of looking at the body differently, where you go least invasive to most invasive, and that it's just a system of levers and pulleys, and if something's off, usually it's because one of those levers or pulleys isn't working properly. So getting my hip back into alignment with the rest of my body, with my other hip, it's not, it doesn't have that anterior tilt or that posterior tilt, or I can do external rotation, like so many you can get into the weeds so quickly and stuff. But just I think a good place to start is realizing that you yourself can start like now. It doesn't have to be somebody else telling you what's wrong. You don't have to
wait for the MRI 3 months from now to get an official diagnosis. It's like just start tinkering.
Because a lot of times those MRIs and those doctor visits, you leave there with a piece of paper saying something itis. Pretty much all the time. So you can say like, okay, I have tendonitis. What does that mean? It's inflammation of the tendon. Okay, great. So how did that happen? Well, I was probably using it too much. It's like, what were you doing? Well, I went on some walks. Is going on walks bad? So like you can see how this happens, where people start getting diagnosed with pain, and it's like, well, it's because of this, so I can't do that anymore. And then that window just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Right. So to be able to look at it like, okay, itis, a lot of times, arthritis, tendonitis, those
bursitis.
So those types of things, it's like, okay, that just points to the area
that you already knew was
that
sore
you already knew
with.
what's going on, right? It just added a Latin word to it. so it's not gonna fix anything. Even surgery a lot of times won't fix anything, and a lot of times you'll end up getting surgery on the side that was actually working properly. A lot of times in hip replacements, you start compensating with the better hip. So like, well, let's say just you go through life and you get an imbalance, maybe you get an acute injury, or you sit a certain way, or you have a certain job, and one hip starts getting weaker or stronger, and then you start kind of leaning to the stronger side. You stand with one side, you balance with one side. That side is the one that's working properly and is the stronger one, but it starts to get overused and overworked, and then it starts to break down, and then it gets the itis, and then it's like, well, this one has to be replaced. It was like, no, this one was working good. You just blew it out because the other one wasn't doing anything.
It wasn't pulling
So
its
now,
weight.
so now you're stuck with a replaced hip that you're gonna have to rehab, and then you still have this weak hip or imbalanced hip or rotated or tilted or something going on. So like to realize that just because something's in pain, that doesn't mean that that's the bad one. That could be the one that's actually doing the job for the other side. A lot of times,
That's a good point.
that happens so much. So that's where like the alignment comes in of like, no, this is telling me something. It doesn't mean that this is a bad thing. It means maybe it's working harder.
Bring awareness to it.
Maybe it's doing something that it's not supposed to because it's compensating for something that's not doing anything.
Right.
So that's where like the alignment and looking at it differently. It's not a fire, like I mentioned, like I was like a firefighter earlier, pain firefighter. That's not the good way to go about it. You have to look at it more of like the bird's eye view, or the like God's eye view, the holistic approach of, no, just because the pain's here, that doesn't mean it's there. You deal with that with your calls so much. Like you get a description of what the call might be happening, but you have to look at it differently and expect that this could be something totally different.
Absolutely.
So you have to look at the body like that as a whole, and alignment of joints and bones, and strengthening and stretching and all those types of things. And that pain can be a signal that something's not right in the body. So let's not dump a bucket of water over the whole circuit board and therefore the pain stops. So that took care of it.
Right. So I have a few questions, and I could probably guess some of these, but I'd like your opinion. So what would you say are probably maybe like the 2 to 4 main areas of the body that you see people complain of chronic pain or discomfort in? We'll start with that. We'll start there.
There's, of course, low backs.
Yeah.
And shoulders.
Shoulders, okay.
And hips and knees.
Hips and knees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, those 360 degree joints, the shoulders and the hips, whenever it's somewhat of a safe bet to be like, you have pain in your ankle or your wrist or your elbow, let's go higher up. Let's go upstream to either the shoulders or the hips, because that's where so much, all the other joints are like hinge, you know. The shit can go wrong, of course, but a lot of times it's when you have those 360 ball and socket joints, the shoulders and the hips. It's safe to go there to look at problems. So with that, yeah, a lot of problems stem around the hip area, low back, which includes low back.
So hip and low back was going to be my number one guess. I just wanted to see your opinion as well.
Yeah, that's the locomotive.
Yeah.
Happiness is in the hips. You've heard that. They say that in yoga a lot, but it's...
I've also heard that I had a yoga teacher that used to tell me that where we hold, and now chakra work is not my forte, although I am very interested in it, and I think there's a lot of truth to some of it. But I had a yoga teacher that used to tell me that we hold all of our stress in our hips. So it's not uncommon when you do some deep like hip opener classes to actually get quite emotional or start crying.
Yeah.
So if someone is experiencing low back and hip pain, I guess what I'd like to ask you is, so can you explain a little bit about the psoas muscle and what that is, what it does, and how, having a psoas muscle that's not primed as it should be would cause pain and discomfort?
Well, psoas, Psoas, and I think we're talking about psoas major.
Psoas
right?
major, I should clarify.
There's a minor too, and again, I'm an expert in some of these things, but as far as like the nitty gritty origin and insertion of every muscle in the body and like the Krebs cycle and like fat burning and stuff.
I do not want to talk about the Krebs cycle. I still have nightmares about the fucking Krebs cycle.
Yeah, that's not...
no, we're just talking generally. Like, I think the psoas is a very important muscle, and it's very interesting. And you've written some like online content about it before, so I would consider you to be like a mini expert in it. So just I'll
take junior expert.
Yeah, you're a junior expert in the psoas. So tell us what you know about the psoas major and why it perhaps contributes to chronic low back and hip pain.
Well, if we think about levers and pulleys again, and bones not moving by themselves, and you only are ever moving because muscles are moving your bones and your skeleton.
Bones are rigid.
You're not you're not Jack Skeleton, right? So muscles are super important, not to just be overlooked. Like, that's literally and this psoas major, some would say that it might be one of the most important muscles on your body. Maybe
I would argue
2.
After your diaphragm.
Yeah. Is your heart a muscle? Your heart is a muscle?
Your heart has muscular tissue.
Yeah. So let's say top 2 or 3 muscles. And the psoas major is what we're talking about. And that's... You've heard of fight or flight. You've probably heard of a fight or flight muscle. And this is that muscle, the psoas major. So what is fight or flight? Well, you're... Basically, you think of that fighting for your life or running away for your life, that muscle. And this is the only muscle in your body. First of all, it's a super deep muscle.
Very deep.
It's
thick.
Yeah.
My yoga teacher usually describes it as it's as thick as your fist. So if you clench if you clench and make a fist, that's how thick your psoas is, like relative to your body size. Yeah.
And now picture that fist and that forearm that is on each side of your belly button, very, very deep, and it attaches to your femur on the lesser trochanter, so like the inside line of your femur, and then it also goes up, and like the origin is many vertebrae, T12 to L5, so it's not just like one point, but it actually attaches to all those different bodies and transverse processes of your vertebrae. So literally, if you're thinking of your own forearm and fist, putting it like to your top of the femur, going all the way on each side of your spine. So think about how deep that is.
And what's also interesting about it is if you think about that anatomy you just described, it's like if you look up a picture of it, you can easily Google a picture of it. It's how you're describing it is it attaches on the front part of your body, but then it reattaches on the back part of your body. So it's almost like a serpent, like twisting muscle that connects not only your front and back, but if I'm not mistaken, it's also the only muscle that connects your upper half and your lower half.
Yeah, that's why it's the fight or flight muscle, because it's the only one that would be involved with like punching and running or kicking. It's a hip flexor, so if you're gonna be running or kicking, it's gonna be engaged, obviously, because hip flexion is just when you're raising your knee up, right? And it also helps to aid in twisting of the torso a little bit. It's not the main guy, but as far as like lateral like rotation and some flexion of the torso, which involves like you fighting for your life with your upper limbs. So it's the only muscle in your body that actually connects the upper half to the lower half, which is pretty insane to think about.
And then if you are someone who is interested or does believe in like energy work in your body holding certain energies and stress, so it also is largely centered in this hip area where we just discussed holds stress to begin with. So if you activate your fight or flight system, you're perhaps holding your breath while you're doing that. You're activating this muscle with a bunch of adrenaline, and you're holding stress and emotions in your hip.
Yeah.
No wonder that all our hips and low backs are
Well,
sore.
let's even take, like, we want to start doing more and more of this where, like, we actually incorporate some exercises and stuff, and I'll do, like, some NLP exercises and, like, talking people through it. But why don't we spend, like, 30 seconds right now where we, as well as, like, anybody who's listening, like, go through your body.
Should I change my position on the couch?
No, you're fine. Okay. You're fine. You can do it, like, as you're seated right here, but, like,
yeah.
Okay, let's say you actually just took stock of your body and your stomach right now.
Okay.
And let your stomach hang. Let it go. Like that feeling of it being tight and being shallow and holding in, that's that psoas on. It's not just the psoas, but that's on. So take stock of your body right now. Let your stomach go. Let your abs go. Let your jaw slide forward and down. If you think of a swing set or a swing going, you're not holding your jaw high and tight. Let it go down and forward. Again, relaxing your stomach and your abs and breathing in through your nose fully and out through your mouth fully, nice and slow. And just like taking stock of, okay, what muscles are actually still on. Is there one of those like trick birthday candles where I turn it off but it's back on again? That's gonna happen with your shoulder and your jaw and your glutes and your psoas and your abs. It'll be like that trick birthday candle. So even just like hopefully you took 10 seconds just to be like, oh, okay, so awareness of where you're holding on to tension in your body.
Now, arguably, this is probably easier to do in, actually, this is a nice segue into static back, which is something that I hope you're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So there's two alignment exercises in particular that you taught me. I have taught to other people. They've literally changed my life. It's largely eliminated my hip flexor pain. I used to have really tight, weak hip flexors to the point that like I couldn't even do crunches or like a lot of my yoga
leg lift,
a lot of my yoga postures and stuff like that because and I would constantly want to be stretching my hip flexors because I'm like, oh, they're so tight, I got to stretch them out. But it was a combination of like tightness and more so weakness than even the tightness.
Yeah.
So these are two exercises that specifically target this psoas muscle that have been like life changing for my hip health.
Yeah.
So one of them is static back, which we do have a little Instagram page that we do together at Yogi and the Coach on Instagram. And you've made a post specifically about this, but maybe for people that either don't have Instagram or haven't like looked at this post, maybe you can talk through a little bit how you would set yourself up for this exercise and why it's why this exercise is beneficial.
Yeah. Again, if you don't have like Instagram or want to go to my website or any of that stuff, you have Google, you can type in static back or static back pain-free because this is one of those exercises where the book Pain-Free, again, I highly recommend it, Pete Egoscue, however you want to pronounce it, but it kind of gives you like that concept of, what's causing pain? Can we look at this differently? Bones don't move by themselves. Let's talk about alignment. And then it goes by chapter, going by like sections of the body. If you have pain here and it feels like this and this part, he gives you like a list of exercises that can help. And static back is pretty much in every chapter. We've talked about it as like the reset button for your body.
I like it because you can also meditate in this posture, so it's like a double whammy. You
can get a lot of birds with one stone. So static back, it is meaning that static, you're not moving, and you're on your back.
So how would somebody set this up at home?
I know. You're lying on the ground, or if that's completely out of the cards, then you can do it on a hard surface, a table, a massage table, a bed, but
the harder the surface, the better.
Yeah, because then you're going to be able to like have more support and melt into the floor more. But we set it up as you have a couch or a bed or a chair, and you lie on the ground and you scoot your butt and your hamstrings up to the edge of that couch or that table so that your backs of your knees are like right up against it and your legs are over that and your knees are bent at 90 degrees and you're just lying on your back with your hips bent at 90 degrees and your knees bent at 90 degrees. So your knees are like right above your hips. You know, if you ever have low back pain and you instinctually do the pillow underneath the knees to take some weight off, to take some pressure. So think of that, but even more so where it's exactly that 90 degrees, okay? So you're on your back, knees and legs propped up on something where you can relax them, you can let them flop out. You're not holding on to things. The whole point is not to do this and then hold on some more. So you set yourself up into that position. You can use a little rolled up, if your neck already is sore from having to like reach to the ground, because a lot of times if your posture is already pretty, you know, kyphotic, if you're already like really leaning forward, then chances are you're not going to like lying on the ground with no pillow. So instead of using a pillow, maybe you grab a towel and you roll it up and you put it behind your neck and you just have enough support where your neck is supported but it's not lifting your head off the ground. The goal is still to have like the back of your skull touching the ground, but
like your occiput.
But you but you have some support for your neck now, so you can do that. And then if you're like Gert or myself, you meditate while you do this. So we'll put something. Oh yeah,
get some spa music going.
You get some spa music, whether that's on your speaker, whether that's on your headphones and stuff. You'll put an eye mask on, or you put a little blanket or another towel just folded over the bridge of your nose so that you have some pressure, some weight on your eyes. Anybody, if you have ever had a massage and they start touching like your face or your jaw, notice how much your muscles relax when they're being touched. When there's a little bit of weight on them, you're more likely to relax, and that's why there's a weighted blanket. That's why. And that also applies to your eyes. I've used it a lot before, and it's always funny, but it's the crocodile wranglers, where if you think back to Steve Irwin or Steve Irwin types, where
R.I.P.
How do you know, we got this croc that we need to like, you know, measure and transport it to a different spot of Australia. Usually it starts with like 20 adult males jumping onto it, like everyone like piles on, and then they cover, like, you know, they duct tape its jaws, and then they also duct tape its eyes, and when the eyes are finally duct taped, everybody can get off, and the croc is just super chill because it has that reptile brain. When you close those eyes, you're more likely to relax.
Interesting.
Because humans came from reptiles, believe it or not, once upon a time. So from some lizard fish.
Yeah.
And then slowly turned into some cat-type monkey.
Yeah.
But so like those things where it's like when you have a little bit of weight, you know weighted blankets are being used for so many people with, you know, autistic
anxiety,
autistic children. It's just comforting too. You just buy it and you melt into it. So when you have something over your eyes, you're more likely to relax your face and to not fidget like that crocodile. And then so you're in static back, eyes, pillow, whatever.
Set a timer
On your phone for like minimum 10 minutes, max 20. And you put it just slightly out of arm's reach.
So you can't fiddle.
So then you take, you have to have these like fail safes, and you have to think ahead of, okay, let's make this as easy as possible for myself.
When I feel my phone vibrate, I'm going to want to reach it. But what happens as soon as you reach for your phone? Now your arm's up again. Now you're tilting your head forward again to read it, right? So I think how I like to do it, and I've been doing it for years now, I've got a nice sweet spot at 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good both meditative and body just time frame that works for me.
Yeah, and
you can. That's after I've worked up to that over time.
Yeah, because if I can just like jump in, like, it doesn't really matter how long you do it. Because a lot of people will do this when they have like back pain or when they threw their back out, and that's where you don't want to stay down there for like an hour, because then you ain't gonna be getting up. And you're not going to be able to move because you're immobile and you like lock yourself up. So like that, if you have like a thrown out back, like literally thrown out, you don't want to stay here for super long time.
Right.
Because you've gone to calls where people are like, well, my back hurts, so I lied down. And
it's like, and now I haven't gotten up in 3 days because I can't.
Yeah. So, but if you're like just in a little bit of pain or moderate pain,
or preferably no pain at all, where this is just preventative,
you're doing it proactively. Continue on how you would do it.
The nice thing that I like about this exercise though is it really, like, this is an exercise where you can totally use gravity to your advantage, and gravity is free, so you don't have to buy any fancy devices. There's nothing that you have to, like, this is literally just you and gravity and making gravity work for you. So I always think of it like anytime you're standing upright, honestly, even if you do have perfect posture, gravity is pushing you down to the ground.
Is compressing your spine still.
Yeah, right? So this is a really nice exercise because when you're laying in that flattened position, so your shoulders, hopefully at some point you get rid of the towel behind your neck, but to start, you can have it behind your neck and your occiput, so your whole posterior chain is laying on the ground. And then you'll actually, one thing it made me really aware of is how much my shoulders were actually tilted in, probably from being on a phone, like you said, we're all hunched over, whether that's from doing the dishes or picking up children or whatever, workplace, right? But one thing it made me aware of is when I actually am laying on the ground and I can fully let my shoulders relax back, gravity pushing down on the front of my shoulders feels so good to actually just open up my chest. So while this is, I mean, you did mention it in the book, this is good for every body part, but I love it because I feel it immediately in my low back. My left side is my worst side, and where I was having predominantly most of my hip flexor pain, so I get still now, and even though I feel pretty good, I get throbbing in my low back. I get sensation
when you're doing static back. You'll get like this kind of like little like, oh, something's waking up back there.
My low back, it's throbbing. Sometimes in my hip flexors, it's
and not throbbing
like
pain, but you can feel the
just
pulse
an awareness.
going through it, right?
Just an awareness. Throbbing in my left low back. I get like not intense spasms, but I can feel my hip flexors like want to tighten and working. So, and then I breathe into my diaphragm, let my belly get super relaxed. Yeah. Because that in and of itself will also release your hip flexors, just that expansion of your abdominal cavity and your diaphragm. Because remember, the psoas passes through your abdominal cavity to attach into your low back. And then the gravity pushes down the front of my shoulders. You let your jaw relax, which also helps release your shoulders. Yeah. And then you just put on some spa music and get groovy.
Yeah. So about the getting groovy part, can you explain exactly? But yeah, so getting into like what that pose actually does is when you have your ankles and your knees and then your hips and then your shoulders all like in line, right? Because that's how we want you to be lying down with your legs up on something, and then your arms, out to your sides. Maybe your palms are up, maybe they're down, but with maybe a foot of distance between your forearm and like your body or your thighs and stuff. And then that's just the ingredients to the cake. The actual baking of the cake is when you start doing those diaphragmatic breaths, when you start shutting down your muscles. How does a cake taste when you eat the ingredients separately? Does it feel good to eat flour with raw egg? Is that?
I like eggs.
Right? If you Always Sunny, when they make Frank eat a cake, but it's like, no, you have to eat the ingredients of a cake. So he just has to do all the flour, like spoonfuls of flour. So the actual baking of the static back cake is when you start to shut down your muscles. You start to go through, just like a switchboard, your feet, your knees, your groin, your quads, your stomach, your jaw, your shoulders, and remembering that it's going to be like that trick candle. It's going to be like that for everybody. You can't just set it and forget it. You're going to have to stick to it and remind. And then starting with those diaphragmatic breaths, which means breathing with your diaphragm, which is a muscle.
Let it, as you breathe in, it will pull down, so to essentially make more room for your lungs to expand, right? And then as you exhale, it will contract back up as it pushes the air out. But when you get that really full expansion, it allows your abdominal muscles to relax. And breathing deeply just feels good and is good for oxygenation and relaxation while you're in this position.
So much about breath, right? If I could just like another couple minutes or so, you think? Yeah. That diaphragmatic breath, you can tell you're doing it when your abs can be relaxed, and when you're inhaling, your stomach is rising. So it's not like you contracting your abs and pushing out, but that the start of the breath will be the immediate like chest for the first second or two. It'll be like chest and lungs, and then you're going to be feeling your stomach expanding and pushing out, and it's doing that because the diaphragm is pulling down and expanding, and in order for the diaphragm to have space, the stomach and intestines go out.
Right.
So that's why it's called belly breathing. So the diaphragmatic breath in that static back position, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, if you're like Jenna, 25 minutes, as long as like your back's not already thrown out. And that is just the reset button for your hips and your shoulders, and it's using gravity for you. You're using it as like a friend to flatten you out, and you're using the breath as like the baking process, because none of this shit's gonna work if you get into this position but you're still tense and tight and shallow breathing. Nothing good. Nothing bad's going to happen, but nothing good is going to come from that.
Much like meditation, which we've alluded to in a previous episode and we'll do much more about, but you will, like, it sounds simple when you're laying there with your eyes closed and something over your eyes and you don't have your phone and you have nothing to do. You're like, well, this would be easy. How would I forget to breathe? But your mind will start wandering. So you don't have to be upset when your mind starts wandering, or when you start going through the laundry list of like what you have to do when you're done. All you have to do is remember where you are, that you can't do anything else while you're in this position, that you have a timer. So you're, well, except for the one time that my timer didn't work and I actually sat there for 55 minutes. But if you are a smart person that can accurately set a timer, it's going to go off in 10 minutes. So just keep coming back to this idea of like, when you forget to breathe, which you will, just come back to it. It's not, you're not wrong. You're not doing it wrong. Nothing bad is going to happen. But I do this all the time. And this is really this is, in my idea, what meditation is just coming back to the immediate moment. And when your mind pulls you out of that moment to do to things in the past, things in the future, just come back to now. And the breathing is the key to this. And then also letting gravity work for you is the key to this. Like gravity's constantly pressing you down when you're in a flattened position. Let it press you down in a way that's beneficial for you, right?
So this is using this exercise, the static back, as just a great exercise, but it's just one where it helps to get your body back into alignment when it comes to your posture with your neck and your shoulders, and then also to relax muscles in your hips and your knees and your groin and your abs. And you get two birds with one stone. You get to improve your physical body, and then you get to improve your mental health, but through meditation at the same time. And we have a hilarious video of like 6 of us and our friends all in this static back position after a snowboarding day. It's just like you literally just go through the room, and there's like
bunch of 35-year-olds after a day of
6
boarding.
people just in this. It's a reset button. What are reset buttons used for, and what are they good for? It's like, well, when shit starts getting squirrely with the computer and it's not running properly, let me just reset this. And That you don't have to do anything. And that's sometimes the hardest thing to do, is to, can I set myself up in this position and not do something?
Right.
Yeah.
Just in the sake of time, there is one exercise I wanted to talk about quickly. But also, and this one isn't free. This is something that you actually have to purchase. So if you're on a budget, start with static back. But another thing that's been a game changer for my hip and low back health is something called the Pso-Rite. And again, Psorite. So it's called the Pso-Rite because it specifically targets the psoas muscle. And basically they have an Instagram account. I've tagged many people in it over the years. This is something you bought years ago, and you've also bought it for clients for like Christmas and as gifts and things like that over the years as well. But it's essentially a piece of plastic that is the width of your hip anatomy. And I mean, we all have different size hips depending on like body composition and weight and things like that. But our hip bones are roughly within a few inches of each other for regardless of your physical weight or size.
Yeah.
So it's anatomically lined up with a regular hip width, and then it's almost like a double pronged piece of plastic, but it is that, but it's graduated where they like, it's not pointy, it's like little hills almost, like graduated hills.
Yeah, like a smooth roller coaster kind of thing. Yeah, with two little, with a valley.
And it's meant to place directly into your psoas muscle. And I actually like using it at both sort of attachment points. So right in my hip flexors, like I'll drape it over in the crux of my hips.
And you lie on it, right?
You lay in a prone position, so in a forward position on it. So I've been doing it for years. So if I have the time, I like to do 15 minutes in each position. There is not a chance in hell you'll be starting with 15 minutes. This is definitely something that takes like working up to. Start just trying to get on it and see if you can get in a position.
Yeah.
And then work your way up from there. But you essentially will put these prongs in your hip, like in the crux of your hip flexors, like in the bending part of your hips.
And into your abs.
And then you can also reposition it into your abs. So if you feel the lowest part of your ribs and then the top part of your hip bone, that's where you want it to sit. And from there it will sort of get that where the serpent comes around into your abs, but also where it connects into your T-spine and your L-spine. Again, it's maybe a bit difficult to visualize, but you can check them out on Pso-Rite on Instagram, or just Google the Pso-Rite on Amazon, which I believe is where you purchase them from. But total game changer for my hip health. And I've also talked to other people outside of you and I, of course, who it's been beneficial. And I'm talking like higher level athletes that are into jiu-jitsu and like mountain biking and stuff. And it's been game changer for their sport.
And it's designed to help get some pressure and massage and kind of pinning that psoas muscle so that you can breathe through it and start to open it up and release it, and gain your breath back and your hip mobility back by getting into like that deepest muscle. You're not gonna, if a masseuse tells you that they're able to just get to that psoas major by moving things around, like that's not gonna happen. Nor is this Pso-Rite able to just pierce through everything, but it can put enough pressure on that.
Over time, things will move around as it relaxes.
And that is just like if you think of a guitar, let's say you have a guitar, acoustic or electric, and one of those wires is just like wrapped around the other ones, and it's not playing the tune properly anymore because this one wire is just wrapped up. And that's kind of like what your psoas major is. Like, so if you can untangle that and unwrap it and get it functioning and stretched out and strong again, then the guitar plays the melody that you would hope it is. And that's kind of the body as well with the psoas.
Yeah. All right.
Well, that's just the first part of the actual
This might
vessel.
be our longest one yet, but I mean, we could go, and again, we can go and we will go, and there are people that have dedicated their whole entire lives to little niche parts of things that we talked about today.
Yeah.
But I guess takeaways for today are, when you are trying to figure out how to manage your chronic pain, learn like the general anatomy of your body to begin with, and what some of the musculature looks like, and some of the parts in the place where you're having the pain. Learn how those lever systems work. Tons of free content online. Don't be scared to get in there and try things, and know that they might not work, right? But you're never going to know if things work or not unless you give it a go. And there are literally thousands of different exercises and variations of alignment and exercises. So just give it a try, see what sticks.
It's never been better. The information for this stuff has never been more readily available, and like people are figuring it out and dedicating their like knees over toes guy.
Yeah, knees over toes guy.
So that's a good one too, where it's like people have
just so everyone's aware, there is an Instagram page called Knees Over Toes Guy. This isn't like a random Parkdale neighbor that we're like, there's Knees Over Toes Guy again.
And he's literally built enough of like a following and information and programming to help thousands of people just over the course of like maybe 5 years or something.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like on the biggest podcast in the world. And it's all just based on, he had knee problems and was told like get knee surgeries through basketball and stuff, and it didn't help. It just made things worse. And then he started like, okay, what how else can I do this with it? Not just relying on surgery, but having it as the nuclear option.
Right.
Yeah.
And then last sort of, I guess, takeaway is those 2 exercises that we've mentioned. One is for free. You require nothing but gravity, which is always pushing you down anyways, so use it to your advantage. Static back. And if you do want to purchase an assistive tool to help you with this, you can also purchase the Pro-Rite. Which we are not affiliated with in any way. It's just something that I feel super...
If we were affiliated with it, we'd be living in Parkdale.
We would be living in Parkdale doing this with a microphone between us on the couch. But 2 things that we feel super passionate about because they have literally changed my low back and hip health, truthfully.
Yeah, and we'll get, again... This is just like that kind of intro into the physical side of it, the musculoskeletal side of it, and shining a flashlight. We have a pretty big spotlight for the musculoskeletal, but again, it's just seems like a flashlight for all the information that's out there, and that you can find on your own as well.
All right.
Bye, everybody. Love ya.
Bye.